Okay, we are live. This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined by my special guest host, Mr. Darren Y. Darren, how are you this evening?
We're hanging in there, Mr. D. How about yourself?
Doing good. And I see we have a special guest, Mr. Tom S. Tom, how are you this evening?
By the grace of God, I woke up today, Mr. Davis. Thank you for asking.
I know what you mean. So where are you coming to us from?
Sacramento, California, sir.
Oh, SAC.
Yep.
So you were over there, got a case over there in Power Inn Road?
Yep.
I've been there many times. You want to hear a funny fact?
Sure.
But if I fly into Sacramento International Airport, it takes me about 45 minutes by Uber to get to the courthouse.
Yeah.
If I fly into Sacramento to go to Yolo County CPS court, it's about 20 minutes.
Is that how you guys get around up there in California? Is you fly everywhere?
Southwest is basically a taxi cab, my friend.
Yeah, I agree.
Does Southwest go to Maine?
You know, we did have Southwest up here for about a few months. They've tried to do all kinds of shuttle things, and it just never worked. Pan Am used to fly to Florida, like they try to do the ultimate Florida trip and that stuff, and no, nothing ever pans out for us.
Did you say Pan Am?
Yeah, remember that? Pan Am?
Pan Am.
I didn't know that you even knew what that was. You're old enough to know what that is.
Mr. D, I might look like this, but I'm not that far behind you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm a bit over 20, that's for sure.
Okay. So, Tom, what's going on in Sacktown?
Well, did you want me to go ahead and start, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to first and foremost say all glory, honor, and praises to the Most High God. For without Him, I wouldn't have been able to get through it. So, the case started back in January of 2022. My wife and I were a conventional family. My children at the time were 1.5, 18 months, and 3 years old at the time. I had come back home, and that morning, being the idiot myself, I made a mistake. I had a lapse of judgment. I took a substance from a friend of a friend that I thought was cocaine. And by the time I got home, and I already had taken, I took it away from the house. I had come home, and I immediately kind of felt something was different. It wasn't myself anymore. I can tell. It was something definitely it wasn't what I expected. So my wife had just left as I returned home, and grandmother was sleeping in her room. As everything was panning out, it literally felt like I kind of felt like an NPC, like almost like I was like an NPC, like I was just not in control of anything. Mentally, I was there. I could see everything happening, but physically, it seemed like I had no control. So what happened was that I took my children outside, and I went out to the front yard. Well, coincidentally, my neighbors were across the street, and my neighbor was asking me, "Hey, is everything okay?" He was like, saw me holding the kids, and I didn't respond to him. So he immediately was like, "Oh, there's something wrong," So he was trying to get me back inside the house. He was knocking on the door, trying to get a hold of my mother-in-law. Well, as I'm out there, he's trying to get trying to talk to me. Apparently, I wasn't really being very responsive. What it looked like to me was, honestly, it looked like I thought he looked like he was trying to come after me, being under the influence. So he ended up calling the police. Police show up. I'm still under the influence. Apparently, my neighbor told me that I was praying at some point because I was literally, paranoid, freaking out. The police end up. I was told that they were talking to me, they were asking for the children because I was holding them. I was holding them tightly, but it's because I was kind of freaking out. So I'm holding them tightly, and they ended up, apparently they were asking me, hey, they were asking me to, to let go of the children. And after some time, what they did was they ended up pulling the children away from me, and they detained me. So as I'm detained, they called the ambulance. They hooked me up. They said, hey, his heart rate's up. It's indicative of drug use. So they pull me into the ambulance. I go to the hospital. As I get to the hospital, I'm still, I'm still just out of it. Later on in the evening, as soon as I get back to normal, I'm looking around, talking to the nurses now, and they're asking me, is everything okay now? I said, yeah, I really need to pee. I finally got back down. And I'm like, I just want to go home. So they said, hey, you know what? You're more than welcome to go home. We're not the police here. We just want to make sure you're okay. I said, look, I'm back to normal. I just want to go home. I just want to hydrate and get out. I'm done. So they made me sign a waiver, a liability waiver to get to be released. And I went home. Later on that week, I get a unexpected doorbell by who I see is a social worker. So me being, I never had an instance in my life, never had them come into my life before. I answer the door. As I answer the door, she tells me, hey, I'm here, about what happened last Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it was. I said, hey, you know what? I can't talk to you right now. I'm going to have to speak to you later. We're going to have to reschedule. And we ended up rescheduling. She saw the kids. She said, hey, may I see the kids? I showed them through the door. I showed the social worker through the door. Hey, my kids are right here. They're smiling. They're literally happy, smiling, So we rescheduled for the next week. Coincidentally, that weekend, the sheriff, a deputy, shows up to my house, knocks on the door, asks me, hey, may I get you to sign this this form that allows me to get your medical records? I said, what do you need my medical records for? I'm sorry, that I don't consent to that. That's private information. Well, I remember that day what I told her specifically. I told that deputy, and what she said to me in response was, well, now that I've asked you, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to go get the paperwork anyways. I said, well, obviously you're doing it as a courtesy because that's what you have to do in order to go get the paperwork from the judge. She apparently, on the record, she put that she found out that I was the drug screen from the hospital said that I had a cocaine overdose and I was under cocaine delirium. So she immediately, on record, she put that she filed charges against me for child endangerment. Said, okay, So the next week, the social worker shows up. That day, actually, I forget really what happened. I know that we had to reschedule again. I told her specifically, or she told me, I said, hey, can we talk later in the day? She said, yeah, we can. Well, she ended up having to reschedule with me. So we rescheduled again. By that time, she came with another social worker. They came into the house. As they were talking to me, I made the mistake by opening up my mouth. And I let way too much information out. But at the time, hey, my children are there. My wife is there. My mother-in-law is right there. I'm embarrassed about what the heck happened that day. I wanted to bury it and get it out of my mind. But me, obviously being ignorant and being young, dumb, and you can fill in the blank, I tried, I thought that I was slick. I basically denied the allegation because I was embarrassed to say it right in front of my wife. What do you want me to say? All this, we're a conventional couple. We've been married for, 8 years now, 7 years. I'm like, I can't let this out, And so she took that and she said, well, we just want to let you know that, because she asked me initially, she said, hey, have you taken any drugs before? I denied it. I said, hey, So she tells me, hey, so we have this drug report that says that you were under the influence of an illicit drug. I asked her immediately. I said, how did you get that paperwork? She says, oh, it's from we have the deputy that got it. They're our collateral witness, and we're basically using that paperwork for our investigation. I said, I didn't know that you guys can, aren't there HIPAA laws against that? Like, what's going on here? You guys are doing some kind of cross-reference, you're why is it that you're using my paperwork from another investigation that has nothing? You guys have your own routes to get to that. I didn't say that, it was just running through my mind. So that day passes, about, I want to say about a month, or she actually asked me for a drug test immediately. She said, hey, I'm going to need for you and your wife to drug test. I said, sure, no problem. I can't do it today. I'm going to have to do it tomorrow, though. She says, hey, by the way, if you don't do it by tomorrow, we're going to take that as a positive test. I said, okay, no problem. I'll take it. I take the test. About a month rolls by, and it's about like February, I believe February, beginning of after the first week of February, I get a text and a phone call. So I call, she answers, I answer the phone. She tells me, social worker tells me, hey, so we want you to come to a CFT meeting. Like we want to interview you again. I'm like, well, what's going on here? I said, wait a minute, may I ask you a question? What happened to that last drug test? Oh, you tested negative. So what's the problem here? Well, it's because of what happened that day. We need to further our investigation, et cetera, et cetera. I said, I'm sorry. I was at the time. It was already. I had something to do that day. I had prior engagements. So I said, hey, I'm going to need to speak to you later, and I need to speak to my wife about this. May I talk to you later? The first thing she says is, so you're not going to come to the CFT meeting? I said, I never said that. I said, I'll talk to you later. And then she said, so you don't want to go to the CFT meeting? And she said also that we have a deadline. I'm like thinking, what is your deadline? Okay, that's nice, but I didn't say that to her. I'm like, you have a deadline? Well, I said, well, look, I still have to call you later. Lo and behold, six hours later, I go to my my engagement. The sheriffs are there at my house waiting, hiding in the corner. They come to my door. My wife sees the sheriff in the corner hiding in the cul-de-sac, and she's looking at me saying, they're here to take them. I said, what? I'm in shock. I don't know what's going on here. So they come, guns blazing. I mean, figuratively speaking. They're like, hey, we got a court order that says we need to take your children. I'm trying to speak to my wife. She's in with the kids. I'm like, hold on. I'm trying to understand what's going on here. What are the allegations? Like, what's going on? I want to see the paperwork. So they serve me the paperwork. And I'm in shock. I'm slightly arguing. I'm not yelling. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. They wouldn't answer me. I even went directly to the social worker and I asked her, I said, why didn't you give me the time that I asked for? I asked you specifically to call. I said I was going to call you back. And she said, well, we had to do, we're on a schedule here. That's what she said. We're like, literally, she said, we're, what do you call it? As I said earlier, well, we have a time limit basically. So even her supervisor was there. She tried to speak to me. I said, hey, look, I've never spoken to you ever in my life. I'm speaking to her. I just want to know the truth from her. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. I didn't say that obviously verbatim, but I just want to know what was going on. So they were basically just telling me, the social workers and the sheriffs were just saying, look, if you just make this less, stop resisting, basically like be more cooperative, we can make this as smooth as possible because you're making it worse on yourself. So my wife, they finally let her, we let them in, and maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, they took my children, and I didn't see them for about 2 weeks after that. I called them directly. As soon as I got the paperwork, I called that social worker, the emergency response worker, and I said, hey, it looks like it says in the back of your paper, it says here that I can place them with family. Can I please do that? She said, oh, I'm not a part of your case anymore. You're going to have to deal with that in the court. I said, oh, okay. So I didn't see my children from that day till the detention hearing, and I had to wait until after I spoke with the juris dispo, the trial social worker. When I finally spoke to him, I got a hold of him after 2 weeks. By the grace of God, he immediately jumped on getting my children to my parents' house. He said, "Oh no! What that social worker told you, they're wrong." And I said, "Look, I haven't seen them." He says, "How long has it been?" It's been 2 weeks. I haven't seen them, man. I don't know where they're at. They're what am I? I don't know. I need to see them. So they moved my children to my parents' house. They stay there. They're now the emergency placement, and I get in. We set up an interview with the new social worker. He interviews my wife. My wife tells me, "Hey, you know what? Like, it happened." I actually, excuse me, let me backtrack a little bit. After they took the children away, the fact that I had denied the allegations ate me alive. And the moment that I really, really just, for those 2 weeks, all I did was I got on my knees and I prayed. And I prayed to Jesus and I prayed to God. I said, look, I screwed up. I can't do this on my own. I need you to fix this. I can't do it. So the moment that I did that, excuse me, everything started to flow a little bit more better, especially with the new social worker. Now, I had told my wife, hey, before her interview, I opened up to her. I told her, look, I made a mistake. I told you initially that I was just hot that day, that it was just this, it was just, I don't remember exactly what I was saying to her, but I told her that I wasn't under the influence and that they were lying. Well, once I opened up to her, she immediately said, look, if you do this ever again, if this ever happens again, I'm kicking you out. Get out of the house. I don't want you here anymore. I said, okay, understand. I understand. That was the day that literally everything flipped and it went not from going downhill, but from going like this. I remember that day specifically. So we have our interviews. I get up front. I speak candidly directly to the social worker, and I tell him straight up, look, I made a mistake. I had a lapse of judgment. That morning, this is what happened. I was under the influence. I screwed up. I've been sheltered all my life. I did it. I don't know why. I was, I was stressed. I was curious. This is what happened. So what he actually said was, he told me specifically, obviously it was over the phone, it's not on record. He said, you know what, sir, if it was up to me, I'd give you your kids back. I said, really? He says, but it's not up to me. I said, okay, that's fine. Hey, I heard it directly from the horse's mouth. So he has the interview with me. We get closer to juris dispo. That's in March. By that time, when it comes, I get the report, and the jurisdictional report says specifically that it went from 5 initial allegations. 2 of them were against me, stating that I had put my children at risk put them at risk due to substance abuse, and I put them at risk due to unresolved mental health issues. And then my wife, hers were 3 other ones that were basically failure to protect with those original allegations that were connected. By the time of juris, when I got there, when I got the report, they dropped 3 of the allegations, and they only had 2. What I noticed in the report was that he actually said, we're keeping the one that is about mental health and not about drugs. And then I forget specifically, but hers was another allegation as well, but it dropped from 5 to 2. So that day, my lawyer told me, I said, hey, there's a problem here. And he said, well, they're still going to be able to fix it. It's just, it could be a typo, whatever, a simple error. I said, okay, no problem. Well, we were set to have trial that day. I said, I want to have a trial. I want to speak. I want to testify. So that day, actually, he had gone inside. My lawyer had gone inside. It took a few hours. He comes out and he tells me, "Hey," did you want to do mediation? I said, "For what?" Well, I don't want you to have, buyer's remorse. If you go in today, maybe you should try going to mediation. So we go to mediation. They reduce that initial allegation of substance abuse to, you put the children at risk because of your substance use. So I say, okay, I agree to the language, like I don't agree to, I'm not admitting to anything. I didn't say that, but I'm like, okay. So they said yes. So because of your substance use, you put them at risk. And same goes for the mother. It was, you should have known, or reasonably should have known, that he was under the influence, or he was engaging in substance use, which puts them at risk. So we get to juris the week later, and I tell my lawyer, I said, hey, I still want to testify. So he speaks on my behalf. He says, the judge says, or he asks my lawyer, hey, so, my lawyer says, father would like to testify. Judge says, oh no, we don't have time for that. Can we move on with juris? And they just had the jurisdictional hearing straight off the bat without me having to testify, nothing. They just went through with it. And I was like, what? I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, okay, well, I told them though prior, I said, I do want to set trial for sure for dispo. That was for sure. But I told them, I said, hey, what's going on here with juris? They just went through with it. So they claim, they claim jurisdiction over my children in March, and he says right out after that he sets for dispo in May. He says get them on their get them on their services, get them started, so that way we can move forward. So we start doing our services. Actually, I apologize if I backtrack. Before the morning of the mediation, the trial social worker told me, go do an intake at the drug rehab center. They denied me. They thought I was actually, when I entered in, they thought I was coming in there for a job. And they looked at me like, may I help you? Well, what are you doing here? He said, well, CPS sent me over here, and they want me to see if I need to come in here and actually do an intake. So they drug tested me that day, tested negative. They actually drug tested me as well during the detention hearing. Me and my wife, those turned out negative as well. We move forward to March. So we're going through our services. I got to tell you, Attorney Davis, these people play some pretty dirty tricks. I'm talking about shenanigans. Like one of the times where I was actually out with one of my visits with my children, the social worker called me as I was about 45 minutes to an hour into my visit, and I only have 3 hours. He told me to go drug test as I'm with my children, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's gonna take me a while to go back. I'm already pretty far. You want me to go back? And he's like, if you don't do it today, we're gonna count it positive. So I had to cut that visit short by an hour, and I went to go take my drug test. Passed it again. There were multiple times where they were trying very hard to get me to pass, or to get me to test positive, or to miss a test. By the grace of God, none of that ever happened. None of it ever happened. I was able to make all the tests, even the ones that he tried to make, or the worker actually asked me to go to. There was one instance where he actually asked me, the social worker asked me to go. He said the paperwork wasn't ready, and I think he tried to kind of mess around by saying he didn't show up, but I have the paperwork that proves that I was there. And he said, the coordinator never turned in the paperwork, and there was more shenanigans going on. But to move forward, sir, so we get to dispositional in May, and again, it takes a few hours. We're put to the end of the docket again. We're put to the end of the trial, the end of the day. And he's like, well, my lawyer initially says, are you ready to testify? I was like, yeah, I want to testify today. So he comes back outside and he says, hey, we actually had a meeting and we want to send the kids home, but you need to move out of the house. I said, okay, I thought we were having dispo today. Oh no, we made an agreement. And this was not even, I didn't agree to it. They just said, hey, we went ahead and did it. I said, all right, hey, if that's going to get my kids home one step closer, I can go with it. So I move out of the house. That happens. I officially move out, and the kids are home around mid-June. From May, that was the end of May, mid-June, 2 weeks later, about that time, I move out. I had nowhere to go. I was living in my car for about 2 months. I did whatever it took to get my children home. Because of the mistake I made, I don't care. I'll do whatever it takes. So as that's happening, the children's attorney sends a social worker over on their behalf, and they gather more information. So as they're gathering more information, they allege that I was actually coming home against the judge's orders, and that I was physically abusing my child, like physically, giving more than, I guess, corporal punishment. I said, really? I have cameras all over my house. You want to ask me what day that? I mean, I didn't say that to them, but I'm like, it's kind of interesting. You guys don't want to ask for any of my evidence. I have all this evidence all around me, but you guys are going to accuse me of something. You guys better have some evidence. I said, hey, go ahead. Social worker calls me the next day and he's like, hey, is this happening? I said, look, man, I'm following everything that the judge is telling me. I'm doing everything that it takes to get my children back home and for me to come back home. That's all I care about at this point. So we end up finding out that ends up being unfounded. He puts it in as unfounded. We get to August, and by August, I noticed the time period, Attorney Davis. I was like, hey, from February all the way till August, we haven't had our dispo yet. We're at 6 months. I said, wait a minute, there's a procedural issue here. I asked my lawyer, I said, hey, so I sent him an email. I said, hey, I need you to ask for a dismissal. Please put a motion in. He puts a motion in that morning. The judge says, I'm going to overrule that. I need to see more evidence. I need to see more of this. County counsel even says, you know what? We need to see more evidence due to good cause. We need to make sure that you're not doing what you're doing. Mind you, sir, I have literally 6 months of clean drug tests. Even since the day that they first came to the house, I've been testing clean. It was just that one day. And they didn't want to take any of the evidence. They're just like, oh, they're looking at the evidence, but they're just like, we're going to keep going. So by the grace of God, they said, we're going to give you a 29-day trial stay. We want you to go home, but under supervision. Okay, no problem. You guys want to hang out? No problem. So we come in we have the next date again, September. So when September hits, they sent social workers, everything. Nothing's happening, literally. I'm testing negative some more. And by the time we hit September, we finally have our dispo. Judge says, I asked again, I said, hey, my lawyer says, hey, we want a motion to dismiss. I actually spoke with the social worker. Actually, the trial social worker's supervisor. She said, we're not going to what do you call this? Go against you if you want a dismissal. Okay, we're not going to object to it. Well, lo and behold, minor's counsel objects to it. She said specifically, just because the father says he's not a substance abuser or to that extent, just because he says he's not on drugs doesn't mean that he isn't. And I'm thinking, you got any affirmative evidence to back that up? Because I got 6+ months worth of drug tests clean. You're going to say that? I would like to see the evidence. The judge's immediate response was, well, he's been testing negative for a really long time. What do you want me to do? So he though he said, I need to see a few more months of this. Kind of contradicts what he said with, you have negative drug tests, but I need to still see some more. So he actually turned it from, initially we had on-demand testing, but at the time of, I forget which date it was, but they made me go on to random drug testing. And then by the time of the 6th month, by dispo, he made me go back to on-demand. She was actually really adamant, the children's attorney. She was really adamant on, hey, I want him on random drug testing. He says, I'm not going to do that. He's been testing clean for all this time. So we go through another 6 months, a new social worker, which was the same one. They were actually tag teaming. It was him, and then they were supposed to be sharing. So we actually had the same social worker. It was just another one that was a part of the case from the beginning. She just wasn't really there. So she shows up, she makes her visits, and coincidentally, the sheriff showed up about a month before the 6-month hearing. And she's, the sheriff shows up, and I'm like, how may I help you? She says, oh, we have an allegation from July of last year saying that you've been going in, inside, and outside of your house, and that there's some physical abuse going on. I said, oh, that's already been dealt with in the CPS court. Oh, no, well, this is for our records. I said, so it takes you guys 6 months to follow up? That's interesting that coincidentally it shows up right before the next hearing. So I say, hey, I told her, I specifically, Attorney Davis, all of this is being recorded on my ring cam. I tell her, I say, look, she comes in the morning. I said, we can talk in the afternoon when I get back after I pick up my daughter from school. So we have our conversation. She's like, the deputy's saying, hey, so I need to come into your house. She says, can we speak inside your house? I said, I'm sorry. I would prefer that not to happen. And also, this isn't court ordered. I don't have a court order from you. CPS can come inside my house. That's on the court order. I have to allow them. But the sheriff, that's not on the court order. It felt like she asserted her authority, call it undue influence. She says, I need to make sure that there's nothing criminal going inside your house. Me feeling pressured, I know what they're capable of, Attorney Davis. They took my children like that. I don't know what they're going to do again. I know what they're capable of. I said, hey, like you said, as in yes, massa. Yes, massa. Just, okay. I learned from the beginning. Yes, massa. Let's move forward. So she inspects the house. She actually said, we need to do a wellness check. I was like, the sheriffs don't do wellness checks inside here. Isn't that the job of the social worker? I even asked my lawyer that. He says, oh, no, that's not normal protocol for the sheriffs to do that. But that's what the sheriff deputy said. I need to do it's kind of like a wellness check. I said, you know what? Okay, like you're already forcing me. You're asserting your authority over me. I have no choice. You're basically telling me if I don't find out anything, if I don't find out what I need to do, I don't know where it's going to end up. And I'm not willing to risk my children again. I'm not giving up my blessing. I'm not doing that. So she comes in, literally, like it took less than a minute. She has me open she looks inside the house. She has me open the refrigerator, check for there's food, check for there's gas, and she's done. Ask my daughter questions about physical abuse. Literally tells her, she asks her, hey, is your dad doing this? Like, is it more than once? My daughter literally, with a smile on her face, just one time. And I'm like, I didn't train her to do, hey, this is her. She's turned around, my daughter's turned around facing the deputy. So she's saying this all on her own, she's a child, she's telling you the truth. I'm like, I don't physically abuse my children. So that goes by 6 months. We're at February, or I'm sorry, we're at the 6-month hearing. By the grace of God, again, I get I get in contact with my lawyer, and he says, we want to dismiss the case, or they want to dismiss the case. Social worker says, hey, we want to dismiss the case. They actually they gave the authority to the social worker to dismiss it by packet. But I mean, come on, you could tell a tree by its fruit. I wasn't gonna, unless I see it happen. Okay, that's nice. You know what I mean? So we get to the 6-month annual review. Case is dismissed. So I just wanted to I want to thank you, Attorney Davis, for being on your platform today, because I wanted to testify on behalf of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and the Most High God. Because what happened, yes, I made that choice and I made that mistake. But through all of this, it made me a better man. It made me a stronger parent. Yes, I know they'll probably try to take credit for it. I'm like, no, this is all God's work. I just moved with him. I moved with his flow. I let his will be done in my life through my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So by the grace of God, sir, my children are back home. I know Miss G would say, court-appointed lawyers. I said, hey, I told her, I said, I had a court-appointed lawyer. It worked out by the grace of God. He was placed there for a reason, and it all worked out. Because I know initially he didn't believe me. He was like, eh. And then I remember towards the end of the case, he was saying, look, this is just another 6 months. It's just a matter of time now. I know you're not going to test positive. I know now that you are not who they say you are. But yeah, here we are today, sir.
Well, thank you for that story. There are a couple of things I wanted to mention to you.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I was typing them in the private comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Those are notes for me.
Yes.
So first of all, at the beginning of this case, you said you went to the hospital and you had a drug screen.
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that drug screens aren't drug tests?
Yes, sir.
And did you know that drug screens are probably not admissible in court?
Yes, sir.
Now, they not only did they do the drug screen, but they observed you and they had their own professional opinion
Yes.
about what was happening. So that's, as it turned out, a minor point. But I just want you to know technically, and all this stuff about if you don't go test, we're going to count it as a positive. Before the jurisdictional hearing is all BS.
Yes.
They don't have the power to make you test for the jurisdictional hearing. And then regarding the privacy rights, your medical records are private. I don't know what that deputy, unless she had a warrant, she can't get your medical records.
She ended up obtaining the warrant. She obtained the warrant. She said, "I'm going to go ahead and get it anyways," and that was through what. It's my humble opinion, sir, that what happened was that she filed, bogus charges against me, in order to retrieve the test, what do you call that, the screens, and then she relayed them to CPS.
Well, the interesting thing is that in order to get a warrant, the deputy has to swear under penalty of perjury certain facts.
That's correct, sir.
Did you ever look at that? They call it an application for subpoena. Did you ever look at that?
No, sir. That was never given.
One of the things you might want to do is get a copy of that.
Okay.
And if it has false things in it, you might want to sue her for civil rights violations. Did you have a criminal case that ever started in your matter?
No, sir.
Okay. Talking to the social worker. I've had this conversation 3 times today. Okay. And you explained what the problem is. You thought you could outthink and out-challenge and outmaneuver the social worker, and you can't.
That's correct.
Everybody watching this, do not talk to social workers without your attorney, because you are not trained the way they are to obtain information. The whole time, I don't know if you know this, but they were playing you for information.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned also about the CFT meeting. There is no requirement for you to go to a CFT meeting, especially without your lawyer. All right. So we already talked about the warrant and the application for warrant. Now, here's something. You said you didn't see your kids for 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't know if you know this, but that's illegal. The social worker has to let you see the kids within 48 hours.
Yeah.
And your case might have been extended 48 hours because of COVID, but that's illegal. And if you wanted to, not that you are looking to file a lawsuit, but that might be an a viable claim because they didn't let you see the children for 2 weeks. Now, here's something that I want to tell you in California. I don't know what it is in other states, but prior to the prior to you losing the jurisdictional hearing, the judge doesn't have the power to make you drug test.
Right.
So, and a lot of people tell me, "Oh, I went to the detention hearing and the judge ordered that I had to go drug test."
Mhm.
That's not a valid order unless you or your lawyer don't object to it.
Right.
If you don't object to it, you got to do what the judge says. So
Right.
for everybody watching, if that's done, talk to your lawyer about whether the judge even has the power to make you drug test prior to you losing the jurisdictional hearing. Let's see what else. This whole thing about you having an extended disposition hearing in California, a motion should have been made. It should have been granted. I don't know why everyone was ignoring that. Well, I do know why. They try to ignore it because they want to do what they feel is right,
Right.
not what the law says. And I
Right.
see that so many times. Oh, we're here to protect children. We can kind of bend the law a little bit. And, if you wanted to, you could probably pursue something of that nature as well. Because you said, I remember the dates, and you said you didn't have your dispo until May or after May.
We didn't have actual dispo until September.
See, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The case should have been dismissed. And there's case law in California about when certain deadlines aren't met and
Mhm.
it's just unreasonable, the case should be dismissed.
Yeah.
Here is what's important: the jurist without testifying. The reason why you needed to testify, and it was your constitutional right to allow you to testify, is because the law in California says no matter what happened in the past, we can't take jurisdiction unless the department proves on that day that you're a risk to the child by a preponderance of evidence.
Mhm.
You could have testified, and perhaps the judge could have believed you that that was a one-time crazy incident that you did, a lapse in judgment, and you're no longer a risk. But without you testifying to that, judge is never going to hear that because the social worker didn't write it in her report
Right.
for the judge to look out. So that, definitely, in my humble opinion, your rights were violated when you weren't allowed to testify. If you wanted to pursue that, you might have a civil rights cause of action. You also might have a complaint against the judge, because for the judge to tell you we're not going to let you testify, that's kind of a crazy move. I know that we're trying to protect children in this system, and it's my opinion that the Court of Appeals wouldn't even go that far, but who knows? By the way, you said that you had a 29-day trial visit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me tell you something. The way the law is actually written in the case law, there's no such thing as a trial visit. It's not in the law. It doesn't exist. And if they give you your child unmonitored, what they're doing is admitting that there's no danger and you're no risk to the child. Therefore, you should be giving your kids back right then and there. The 29-day visit, I think, may have been invented by LA County 25, 30 years ago. And here's the reason for the visit. They want to give you a trial to see if you can, do what you say you're going to do, keep clean. But the 29-day visit actually saves them money. Let me tell you why. It actually saves them money and makes them money. Let's say you get the child back and you screw up. They actually have to go through the whole process again, filing a petition against you, giving you notice, having a hearing, having a pretrial, having a trial, that type of stuff. And so instead of doing all of that, they say you're on a 29-day trial visit, which means the kids really aren't in your custody on paper. Therefore, if you screw up, we don't have to file anything. Okay. And depending on who, the judge is and what your attorney is, most attorneys that I see go along with this.
Right.
And, have I ever gone along with it? Yes, I have. It depends on the facts and circumstances. But occasionally I have, objected to it. And I remember I did this, it's maybe a year ago in a county down here. And the judge kind of smiled at me when I told her, oh, there's no such thing, as a 29-day visit.
Mhm.
And because she knew what I knew, that's not the law. And if you're willing to give the kid back to him today, that means he's not a danger. That means he gets custody, period, end of story. And so she kind of smiled at me. She knew what I was thinking, and I knew what she was thinking. And then she politely said, Mr. Davis, we're just trying to keep these kids safe. And if you have an issue with it, you can always file a writ. She's very nice about it. In other words, take it up to the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals wouldn't get to hear it or decide on it right away,
Mhm.
presumably before the 29 days was over. And then if you've successfully completed it, becomes moot because you get custody of the child. And if you
Right.
screw up, it's like, oh, they did a smart thing by not letting Tom have his kids back. So, I see the rules bent a lot of ways in order to protect children. I don't see it so much the other way to, help the parents, which is, kind of, in my opinion, kind of unfair, but who am I? I'm
Right.
just an attorney trying to represent parents. So, Tom, I want to thank you for your you sharing your story with us. Were there any questions Mr. Guai might have for you?
No. I just, I just can't believe that all of the rules that are, set aside with all of this that's going on clearly state that they can't do what they're doing to everybody with the urine screens. Whether you fail a urine screen, whether you skip a urine screen, whether you test positive for urine screen, they cannot determine, whether you can see your kid or not. They can't take your kid away from you. They cannot do what they're doing. And in every case, that's all these people are doing is they're getting, you tangled up in these drug tests, and that's it. It's just ridiculous. Like them threatening him. Well, guess what? Even if they threatened him to say, if you don't test, we're going to use that against you as a miss or whatever, or it's going to be a negative impact. Even that says in their policies that that's not supposed to be. It could be gauged by their looks that way, but they're not supposed to use that as a negative mark. I mean, these are all things that are found in their own drug assessment books that they put out for the national DHHS. Like it says clearly, urine screens can't be used in the manner that they're using them for.
Right.
And again, those are only screens; they're not even tests. Just like you say, they're not even accurate. So, I mean, how many stories in a week do we hear that the people either tested positive or they didn't take a urine screen and they came and took their kids?
Right. Now, unfortunately for Tom, though, there were several witnesses to testify that something was going on with him.
Mhm.
The neighbor, the police, the doctors and nurses. He was, and by Tom's own admission, he was, out of it. Something was
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
But I just brought up that drug screen versus drug test thing just for people to listen to it and, see if it applies in their case. Unfortunately, that probably wasn't going to work for Tom's case because there's too many witnesses, to being under the influence. It's like getting a DUI charge when you're driving. One of the ways they can convict you is that if they take the blood test, or the urine test, and you're above a 0.08 blood alcohol level. The other way they can test you, they can convict you if they don't have that scientific evidence is, well, Your Honor, he was weaving in and out. I had him take the field sobriety test. I smelled the alcohol. I saw his, pupils, blah, 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 blah. And he was definitely under the influence of what I believe to be alcohol. They can convict you with that without, the scientific evidence. So, it doesn't always benefit us when we, call up that technical scientific argument. But it's an issue that should be considered on every case if they're going to try to use a drug test against you. But Tom, I would have to say that I would agree with you. Let me take off the attorney hat. I would agree with you that this whole experience was a very valuable lesson for you.
Right.
So, unfortunate lesson, but We all make those mistakes and in life, and I'm sure it wasn't the first one you made, and
Right.
won't be the last one.
Yeah,
So it's
that's it.
true for all of us, right?
Mhm.
We're human beings.
Mhm.
Tom, I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, good
I hope
job, man.
everything works out with you and the kids and the wife.
Thank you.
And you don't have any more interaction with CPS up in Sac County.
I won't hold my breath.
All right, Tom. Good night.
Thank you. God bless. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Guai. So we've come to the end of the show.
Oh.
And did you want to ask me something or say something?
So I was looking at Microsoft Teams today. I was using that. This isn't a plug for them or anything.
Wait. You were looking at what?
I was on my Microsoft Teams, on my
Okay.
computer.
Yeah.
And they have a mock trial app that you can use in their meeting status and their meeting system, that you actually set it up as a mock trial. So you can use your time in your meeting as a mock trial, where it's a really cool. I'll send you the thing, but I've been waiting all day to tell you that.
I'm a little confused, but send me the link or send me, email it or text it to me. I'd really like to see it.
Yeah, I thought of that for your event that's coming up. I think that'd be pretty nifty.
That would be as
Yeah, because
would
it's a live thing, and you can set everybody up. It's a pretty cool thing. So
Right.
I'll send it to you. So after
All right,
the
so
show.
everyone, don't forget August 5, Saturday. We are going to have an all-day Zoom seminar. There are going to be several attorneys from all over the country who are going to be presenting. So I think we have about 4 or 5 attorneys that have already committed. I think there are going to be 7 or 8 total attorneys that are going to be presenting. We have an attorney from New York, an attorney from Massachusetts, an attorney from 2 attorneys from California, and I think one attorney, a CPS practitioner from Michigan, I think it is. So that should be some good stuff. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how to sign up right now. Grace, maybe we should do a ticker for the show to show people how to sign up. Anyway, Grace and I and someone else in my office were talking about the best way to have people sign up, either through Calendly or through Zoom itself. But we'll figure that out. So I wanted to tell everybody about that seminar. Hey, Darren, I want to thank you for joining me tonight.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All righty?
Yes, sir. All right.
Bye-bye.
Till tomorrow.